Thank you for joining us for this episode of That Solo Life, the podcast for PR pros and marketers who work for themselves. People like me, Michelle Kane, and my wonderful co host, Karen Swim of Solo PR Pro. And today, Karen, we have a guest.
We
We
do.
love having guests.
We love
Today, we
having
are welcoming, yes, today we welcome Kat Holt of Coology. And she has done some amazing work, and we cannot wait to dig in because we are so excited to have you on here, Kat. Welcome.
Ladies, it is such a pleasure to be here, and I cannot wait to kind of dig into everything.
we're
Yay.
excited.
Well,
Our listeners are
let's
in for
start.
a huge treat today.
Yes. Let's kick it off with just tell us a little bit about your work and what inspired you to start your own company since we're all about that solo life.
Well, I think I started my own company because I had a hard time fitting into the corporate machine. My entire career, spanning over 25 years, has been working in either ad agencies, digital agencies, or in-house for some big brands in the US. And I'm one of those people that have lots of ideas, and oftentimes, sort of the corporate scope structure wants you to have an idea and do it for a while and keep on optimizing, and that's not my jam. And so, in 2021, when everybody was slowly emerging from our cocoons and our safety nests, my partner and I decided it was a really good time to start our own company. So we've been at it since September of 2021, and I couldn't be more grateful.
I believe that there are so many people out there that are thinking about stepping away
Mm.
and starting their own company, and they're wondering about the right time. And I'm sure that many in our audience, and I want to say particularly women, maybe have felt out of
Mm.
step. You had a fantastic corporate career. I mean, you were killing it. So this wasn't that the things that were happening prevented you from failing. It's just that it didn't fit. So tell us a little bit more, like, how did you really discern between what it become normal over, a 2 decade career, 2 decades plus career, to the thing that really finally, kind of pushed you out of the nest and said, now it's time?
It's funny because I'm fortunate enough to have my little girl posse that we always support each other, lift each other up. And we all entered into our 40s, and our stories were very similar. We had worked extraordinarily hard to earn recognition and to receive a promotion and to be able to get to that next level in life. And we were looking around and seeing some of the folks that were also in those positions and in those roles, not necessarily putting in as much effort. It felt like to us that they were getting things that we had to spend sleepless nights working towards and making sacrifices in our lives, usually at the detriment of our own physical and mental well-being and our social well-being. And it's something amazing that happens, I think, for humans. Especially females, we get into our 40s and we look around and we say, I don't think I want to give a shit about this anymore. And
Love
because
it.
we had put so much time into it, I always joke with my team, you're going to look back at this year and realize that inevitably we've put 2, 3, 4 years of work and learning and accomplishment into 1 year. And so I guess we could do a coining of a phrase in women years.
Oh, love that.
Each year is more like 2 or 3, like cat lives. And so I realized, with the support of a number of folks, and in particular my founding partner, Dino Cattaneo, that I owed it to myself to try it for myself, because I was very emotionally and sort of spiritually exhausted by not being able to be true to my values, to being stymied and being able to create team and work cultures that were lifting everybody up and feeling good.
Mm.
And always doing so at the expense of oneself for the betterment of the bottom line. And I thought, man, is this real? Is this really what it has to be? And so I decided I don't care about that anymore. And I had to have the faith and the courage and, ability to look back at 20 plus years and say, okay, it's going to be okay. Let's try it. And I think that just giving yourself a moment to look back and to take sort of a little bit of an analysis of what you've been able to do, and let that be your own internal sort of confidence to do it for yourself instead of for others. Because I think women are socialized to do the work and make others successful because we are raised with this notion of the betterment of the group. And I think that in your 40s in particular, and by the way, you don't have to wait until your 40s. I did. My girl posse kind of has been doing that. But I think it's okay to say, all right, I can do this for myself now, and that's not bad. And in fact, I think it's probably right because, in my opinion, what I'm doing right now is allowing others to see their own potential and to see there can be another way. And that's my service because this world certainly needs another way. And I can't fix ruling parties or clashes, but I can create little pockets where it's not so bad.
That is so true, and I do think something in women, especially as we reach those years, things do shift for us, which is wonderful. People talk about, oh, getting older, but there are some great things to embrace. And I love that you stepped out into, well, the strengths you've always had, but stepped out into this. And before I get to the next question, real quick, is it okay to share one of the fabulous uh, brands or
Sure, yeah.
campaigns you created?
Yeah, go for it.
Happens to be a personal favorite of mine. Kat is responsible for the Dr. Rick character on a certain insurance company's commercials, as in, he has blue hair, or we turn into our parents, which eternally love. So my goodness, based on that alone, you are going to shine. And it's so lucky for the brands that now that you're helping, that they have your mind. And, now that you're on to this new phase of, well, it's not really new, but you're helping these brands create a purpose-driven culture. Can you share more about how you're approaching that process?
Yeah, for sure. And I had the great fortune when I was working in-house at Progressive to be continuing a partnership with the agency I used to work at. So I had been at Arnold, which is based in Boston, working with a fabulous team there, and was in some ways traded sides to swim upstream and help to influence strategy before it became a brief. And the reason I'm mentioning that is because while I was sort of the strategic architect, it took a village to do that. And I think what really was driving me in early years and also today is understanding how to take sort of that friction that we all feel out of what we think we're supposed to be versus what we are and who we are on the inside. And I use the purpose driven branding in order to do that because typically organizations spend a lot of time, especially high performing organizations, they spend a lot of time understanding and identifying what is their culture, how do we make sure it's upheld through all of the ranks, how do we set an expectation that there is a way we want to work with each other and with our customers or our partners. And frankly, usually there's a vision for what kind of positive impact organizations want to have in the world. And what had always been really interesting to me is that many times that story, that purpose, that sort of withstanding central identity was not necessarily applied to the way a brand had conversations externally. And the whole notion here is number one, the brand needs to be an expression of who you are as an organization internally, because it truly tends to be what sets you apart. not for everyone. We can get into that in a second because sometimes it's done in a mail it in kind of way and it's vanilla. But if you have a culture that truly is unique and people say, I really like this culture, it's worth figuring out how to tell that story so others see you too. Similarly, in a campaign like Dr. Rick, it is approaching that thing that is very scary for a lot of people, right? So when you're taking that step as a person and really becoming a first time homeowner, it's super scary. It's usually the biggest check you've ever written. I mean, I personally remember signing my first mortgage and my hands were literally shaking because I thought, well, am I going to be able to do this? And then what do I do? Because the playbook, the adult playbook for owning a home is different. And I remember having a conversation with a young planner at Arnold where she looked at me and I was, 12, 15 years older than she was, had kids, had a mortgage, was in a senior position. And we were talking about something. And I said, well, you know what? I really don't know what I'm supposed to do, but I'm going to make the best decision I can and then learn from it. And she kind of blanched and she looked at me and she said, but you're an adult. Don't you know what you're supposed to do? And I said, oh, no, no, honey. like, we don't know what we're supposed to do. We're only making the best we can and then hopefully have the humanity and the humility to learn from it and do the next best thing. And so that sort of was the
Yeah.
whole beginning of it because,
Yeah.
Especially in the United States, homeownership is such a mark of I have become an adult. It's sort of written in the ethos and mythology of American success. You've made it because but the reality is the economic situation that our young people are entering now is vastly different than the one that their parents did in the 80s.
Yeah.
And they're
Yeah.
looking at it and they're thinking, I failed. And I'm like, you didn't
No.
fail.
No.
Society has not set it up so that you can actually have that promise. And so,
Exactly.
that whole insight of, hey, when we have to become an adult, we look to the others in the room that are adults, and oftentimes those are our parents. That's sort of the psychological truth and what I didn't anticipate. And by the way, the brilliance of Dr. Rick as a character and this whole notion, call it parentamorphosis, that was a team effort. Like that, it
Fabulous.
takes a village,
Oh,
right? And so
sure. Of
that was
course. Of
the
course.
minds at Arnold that did that. But what I didn't understand is, I wanted it to work with the young homeowners. What I
Yeah.
didn't anticipate is its universal appeal, which in hindsight I should have done because when you have a truism, people like to talk about it, and sometimes it's easier to say, "Yeah, mom and dad, on the nose, that's you." But I think that if we actually, right, but I think that if we take a minute and say, okay, our job as communicators, as branders, isn't to create a false sense. It's to really have the courage to be more honest and then forge bonds that feel a little bit better than being like talked at, screamed at, disrupted
Oh,
at, sold to. Like
absolutely.
honestly, we just don't want that.
I agree.
No.
There's a couple threads I want to pull there. One is the purpose-driven branding, because many of us use that term and we
Mm.
all have an approach for how we really make that reality and not just a label. So walk us through some of the key elements that you utilize in your work to take this from this really nice, very um it's like a very virtuous sounding way
Rainbows and sprinkles.
to the hardcore reality of
Mm.
working in that corporate machine. And I'm calling it a machine for a very specific reason. And we all know that at some point among the humans, it becomes a machine. What are some of the key elements that you have found take this from that nice sounding label to a reality that's truly consistently applied throughout the thought process of this machine?
Yeah, and I think this goes to, I don't know why, but I have a founding principle of I think you can do well while doing good. And my entire career, I have tried to find ways to enable some kind of positive outcome from what usually is pretty large marketing or communication budgets. And so I think that when you have this mindset of you start internally, there is some kind of culture. Oftentimes, there is a mission, a vision, in addition to those values or those cultural norms. Um, then, if you take that mindset of, okay, well, what would happen if we tried to create something that allowed for us to live this on the outside so people would take notice and believe that we are a different kind of company? And when you use the internal actions as a filter for identifying a thing, it doesn't have to be everything, it can be one thing that will allow for you to take the same kind of ethos and also sort of objective driven action to the folks that you're benefiting from, which is your audience. It can create something that people really get excited about. And the first and foremost group that gets excited about it are your employees. So I think the notion of how do I take what already is and then apply that to something externally is the first foundational idea. The second one, and this is really, really, really critical, and it's in fact the thing that I'm, pounding the drum on, which is brand is in fact a business asset, right? So I just said, hey, your culture is really important. Most executives, boards nod their head, they agree. I just said also that your brand is an expression of your culture. Well, the reality is that most organizations have not fully understand the strategic operations of brand management. And when I say that, I say oftentimes I'm having conversations. And by the way, these are people who want to talk with me about brand. And they say, I just want to have a nice logo, nice fonts and color palette, a creative way of telling the story. And I said, great. But what's at the foundation of that? How are you managing your brand so that it really truly becomes something that is an asset that can be measured and managed at the executive suite and then also at the boards, or for a lot of folks are looking for capital, they're looking for valuations, they want to be seen as having a higher stock price in order to be able to create a revenue stream. And brand is that, because done well, brand actually helps you decide where you're going to expand into new markets or new products or services. It helps you to understand who you're going after and why. And frankly, it helps you to create an ability to do something different in, call it 3, 5, 10 years than you're doing right now. Because if you don't have a brand that people can believe will do that next thing, we call it brand elasticity, then you're going to be spending a lot of dollars in order to be successful in the future. And that's on top of the dollars you're spending to be successful today. And so if you take a different mindset and really understand who you are as a brand, what the position is, what are you going to stick to? And I'm not saying we're going to be, I worked with P&G to launch the Dunkin' Donuts brand in the grocery store, and they wanted to have the single point of differentiation. And for P&G, it was like that one thing the product does different. That's not why they were licensing with Dunkin', right? They were licensing with Dunkin' because it had a community, a culting of the brand. The value of that cannot be translated into an Excel spreadsheet. And by the way, we did. Our point of differentiation was delicious. But that's not why people buy it. And so, and the reason we were able to do it is because it was when I was at Hill Holiday many years ago, was that we were able to tell the story that actually shone a light on who these people are. And who
Yes.
these people are the regular people that show up every day. They don't want to fuss. It's the fuel that gets them through when they're usually doing the unsung hero jobs in our communities. It's the teachers. It's the policemen. There's a reason why there's a joke about policemen with coffee and donuts, right? Because what they're doing is hard. A
Yeah.
little bit of caffeine and sugar helps. And when you go into a store where you're seeing the other people that are normal, or I say normal, that's not fair. That was a me bias. I will call myself out. Everyday people. Um, that's what you're looking for. And then when you bring
Yeah.
it into your kitchen, you're just like, okay, I can start my day.
Yes.
Right.
Oh,
And so when I'm talking about positioning, it's really understanding who you're for and why it matters.
yeah. No, so true. I thought one of the most brilliant pairings was a community event I worked at a few years ago. The local small town police department were sponsored by their dunk tank was sponsored by the local Dunkin'.
100%.
I'm like, lean into that. That's fabulous, beautiful community brand.
But the thing that's beautiful about that, and again, it's where purpose can then mark decisions.
Mhm.
Mm.
Is that like
Mm.
if you think of, and I graduated with a degree in psychology, and one of my best friends is actually a PhD in psychology. He's like, you're using that word wrong, and I'm like, okay, that's fine, but it's working, for the armchair psychologist that I am. But if you think about it, right now, there are so many things that are really tense about the community's relationship with the police force.
Yeah.
And a lot of it's right, and a lot of it's misunderstood, and there's a lot that goes around it that's way beyond the control of you and I as people, and police forces as an institution.
Yeah.
But if you can bring everyone together and take the conflict out, because you're not pretending it's not a thing, but you're having fun with it in a way that's not saying you're the other, I'm having a joke at your expense, but we're actually creating a moment of happiness together.
Yes, we are
um,
owning it.
that's purpose. That's purpose in real life, right?
Mhm.
Because for a moment, people laughed.
Mhm.
When we laugh, when we have humor, when we have happiness, when we have optimism, we have an openness to do something a little bit different next.
Yeah.
I think that's such a profound point that you just made
Yeah.
because we have this culture of disconnectedness now.
Mhm.
And we have, because we're disconnected, we're not seeing each other, we're not
Mhm.
forming these relationships with other people. We have lost the community, we've lost our ability to listen to one another, to show grace. You're serving up purpose, and we've kind of taken pieces of the human experience, and they've unfortunately become polarizing. So when we talk about inclusivity, which really shouldn't be a dirty term, it should be a worthy human goal. Like, of course, we want to see people as people and respect them, but we've taken that as a little piece and said, okay, this is part of the brand of one party, and this is the other party's brand of that same thing. And so we've weaponized all these things, but you're saying purpose is that thread that can run through. And when you have purpose, you're bringing these other elements back together. So it's kind of like a glue that holds the whole human experience together. And I love that this is another approach I feel that communicators should really lean hard into. When you focus on that thing, the other elements fall into place very nicely. Because I think some of us feel like we're fighting against the external world, but you
Mm.
just unlocked a beautiful thing that we're already doing. But by systematically approaching it in this way, it solves a lot of problems.
I couldn't have said it more beautifully than what you just said. So thank you for that. That's right. In my opinion, right? So I come with all of my life experiences, my purpose, but I also come with a lot of arrows in my back
Mm.
because I was actually talking about this with a dear friend who asked if I was precocious as a child, and I was like, I'm not even sure if I was or not, because I always felt outsider even on the inside, and that disconnect let me see people in a moment where they might not have known they were being seen. And I've just carried that through in my life because of the way I am. And I think, some people say it's empath, some people it says that you're just truly attuned to a situation. But, I've lived my whole life kind of like with my heart on my sleeve and just feeling the world. And it's gotten so difficult to feel. I even say this for myself because it's so overwhelming.
Mhm.
And I think that, with the advent of technology, with the proliferation of digital experiences, would take us away from the physical. I mean, even you and I, we're having this conversation right now through a technical screen. I think we've lost touch with the humanity of life. And as I think about AI and what AI will enable companies to do, people to do, where it will be able to come up with answers and define actions without having to do some kind of processing. I do believe that the future of strong relationships between companies and people is going to return to a more human one on one in the real world moment.
Yeah.
And if we can do that, we are creating tiny communities. And oftentimes they're communities that will come together for the first time and maybe the only time.
Mhm.
And so I believe that even one moment can make a difference. And so if you can use humor, if you can use insight, if you can use something that makes everyone feel just a little bit more healed, what can happen? And if everybody's doing that,
Yeah. You
imagine.
yeah, and you can see that with, some of the younger generations being intentionally analog, even for a part of
That's
their
right.
day. We crave story, we crave community and relationship with each other, and, the shiny toy is only shiny for so long, which is just so incredibly true. You also shared a study, that touched on the decentralization and democratization of productivity and impact. Hello, mouth.
Yes.
Um, why why is that so important for us as communicators to really understand that concept?
Yeah, and I think this goes back to this idea of what is AI going to allow for us as communicators to do. And I would also add, as women who have had to do more work in order to be seen and recognized. And, I just positioned AI as maybe not the greatest thing, but it's also the greatest thing. It just depends on how you're
Right.
using it. And so I see AI as democratizing this ability to communicate and build brand, because it's going to allow for people to become their own brand managers without having to have the big budgets that some of the larger brands have. One of some of the work that we're doing right now, and we're playing around with creating our own AI agents, is to feed in positioning, to feed in the mission, vision, values, the way we want to communicate, the type of personality that we have, and in doing so, then we can say, and now we would like to create X, Y, and Z, and AI is enabling us to do that in a half an hour sitting, and you'll 2 articles and a couple of social promotions, whereas it would have taken a staff to do that in 10 hours. And so I
Yeah.
feel like there is going to be this ability for those that do understand strategy, that have figured out what their brand stands for and wants to manage it like an asset, that AI is going to allow them to do so in a way that felt a little bit harder before. And then for women in particular, you're able to do those maybe extra layers of work to make sure you're sure. I know I do it all the
Mhm.
time. I tend to go back to the stone and say, all right, well, what's the business background here? What's the market? What are the other competitive advertising campaigns that are out there? What do the people want? These are steps I've taken where you look at the company, the culture, the competition, and then the consumer you're going after. So it's the 4 C's that account planners were always trained in. It would take me 2 weeks and lots of time to get to that point. I can do it in a few hours. And then I can remind AI, remember you just did that. Now I want to do this and feed in the mission, vision, values, the brand proposition, the personality. And I'll tell you what comes
Mhm.
from that is not what you're seeing out there, which is the danger of AI, right? AI wants to just create
Yeah.
an answer as quickly as possible, which means it's going to go to the lowest common denominator. It's going to give you a C plus at best quality of work. And so, I think it's going to be super empowering, particularly for women who are wanting to go out and do this. Um, Start playing around with it if you haven't, but do so in a way where both of your hands are on the steering wheel, because you got here so far and you know a lot. Uh, Teach your AI to do it with you, not for you.
And,
Love it.
teaching AI is something, again, and I'm going to speak to women. We have such a huge opportunity here to not only use this technology to shape it, to challenge it, to hold it accountable. Any women out in the audience that are in school and thinking about future careers, consider AI engineering, considering being a part of creating this technology, because with every other advance in our history, women have not been a part of this innovation. So it's not
Yes.
designed for us. It doesn't think like us. It doesn't include us. We see this in big things like medicine, where women
Yeah.
have not been a part of studies that decide drugs that fix things, or how our symptoms differ. And that has not been
Oh God, yes. Don't even get me started on the male bias in medical research.
Right.
and not to be on a feminist soapbox, but again, as communicators, as we talk about making a more equitable, inclusive world, this is one area right now that we can actively participate in and shape and lend our voices in such a meaningful way, so that the models that we're even training are not from a single lens, as so many other things have been. Like automakers and the way that they make seat backs, but we won't talk about that. Like, women do have
And
hairstyles.
seat belts, by the way.
We like to
Yeah.
wear the buns. Sometimes we wear our hair up and we want the seat to fit us. Can you do that? And the seat belt, yeah.
And the seatbelt,
Yes.
come on, it rubs. All right, let's just
Yeah.
admit.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. Who
Um,
doesn't use the thing that holds the seatbelt?
I know. So yes, yes, yes. Yes. So what's interesting is that my company is actually, we're pretty deep in building AI experiences full stack, and I'm the founder, owner, majority owner of the company. And there are times when I look around the room like I am the only woman here.
Wow.
And by the
Yeah.
way, this team wouldn't be together if it weren't for me.
Right.
And I have, again, in the giving zero shits. I hope, and you can block that out. I'm sorry,
No,
but
you're
giving
fine.
zero shits about it now because I'm a woman in my 40s.
Yeah.
But I have built myself to this place where I can be comfortable in that room, and I am at the forefront. I know I am. I know what I'm doing,
Hmm.
and there's not a single female there with me. And so, as an addition to that, yes, yes, yes. Please, you will learn it. Nobody knows. We go back to nobody knows what they're doing. They're
Hmm.
just doing the best they can in the moment they're in. This AI wave is going so fast that even those at the forefront do not know what is next.
Right.
So you might as well be there in that like swirling pool of, I'm not sure, but let's try. But the other thing, please, please, please find another female or two, create your own female posse, because the hardest thing is to be in a room without having somebody who understands your perspective. And there's so much research because, having racial equity in the workplace, we're going all the way back to education, and no matter what your social position is you have to acknowledge the fact that there often is inequity in the accessibility and availability of education, which in America we all say is the beginning steps of being able to have success in a career. It's not because students can't get into the schools. It's that once they're there, they feel really alone. And so the 15 years ago, there were groups of people that were literally putting together posses of folks that looked like the new students that were in the minority, in order to have them feel like they had a village, a community, so that when things got hard, they didn't say, well, it's not for me, I'm not built for this. They said, okay, it's hard, let's talk about it. And they had a little bit of light that let them continue and show up the next day. And I think that's true for us as women. I started this conversation saying I'm fortunate enough to say I have a girl posse group. They are all fierce, and in many ways, we joke that we are the island of misfit toys,
Oh my gosh, yes. I say that all the time
right?
with friends. Yeah.
And it's because society has said that we how we show up as females is wrong, right? Because we have an opinion, we are educated, we have a sense of humor, we like to go out and have fun, and then we do amazing things in our careers that threaten people, and then we come back and do it all over again.
Love it. What a perfect note to end on, Kat. That's fantastic. But before we wrap this up, how can our listeners connect with you?
Sure thing. So I've got a website, one of those things where it's still a work in progress, everybody. My
Oh, I
client is
feel you.
better than my own. But it's at www.coologee.com. That's COOLOGEE.com. I am in the beginning phases of creating my own thought leadership platform called Brand is Business on Substack. And this lovely conversation will be there as well.
Fabulous.
And then you can also find me on LinkedIn. So go ahead and DM me if you want to have a conversation. More than happy to. If I don't get back to you right away, just have patience.
No
All I
worries.
ask is you mention that you heard me here and don't sell me something.
Love it.
Please
Love
do.
it.
I'm tiring of that as well. And we
Mhm.
will, of course, have all of these links in our show notes. So don't forget to check those out. Anything else that you'd like to share with our listeners before we reluctantly close out this episode?
I just want to share that good on you for finding this podcast. And I think it's an indication that there's something sort of in you that is looking to shine brighter. And yeah, that's your right. And do it because you're the only one that can live your life. No one else can, even though a lot of people think they know what's better for you. So just keep on shining and keep on exploring, and it's going to be okay.
That's beautiful. Beautiful. Thank you so much, Kat, for joining us. I'm sure we will have you back again and again, and we wish you every good thing because you're it's not just exciting work, but it's important work that you're doing. Honestly, listeners, what we all do is important work.
It is.
So, you know what? Hopefully, this has been as inspiring to you as it has been for Karen and I right now. So please do share this episode around, connect with Kat, hit us up at soloprpro.com and check out that wonderful community of solos. And until next time, thank you for listening to That Solo Life.